Hello.
Hello, Ravindra. How are you?
I'm good.
Hello.
Yes, it's live, I guess.
I think
Yes.
we're live, yes.
Yes. Namaste from India. Mm, Namaste from all of us. And I'm Ravindra from India, from Ramcat Systems. And I welcome you all today for COMOSYS 2023 presentation. We are very much excited to present COMOSYS 2023 with lots of enhancements requested by our clients and also the prospects. I would like to introduce Mr. Atik, CEO of Proetech, who will be presenting the highlights of COMOSYS 2023 today. I would like to introduce Mr. Atik, CEO of Proetech, who will be presenting the highlights of COMOSYS 2023 today. And also Mr. Sonar, General Manager of Software Development Department. And now we pass on to... And also Mr. Sonar, General Manager of Software Development Department. And now we pass on to Mr. Atik and Sonar to say a few words and start the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ravindra, for that kind introduction. So I just want to welcome everybody again. It's been 6 months, perhaps, something like 6 months since we last met. And those were very exciting times. If you remember, we had a marathon of 3 separate webinars, one on steel and one on concrete and one on finite element analysis. And today we are back again after 6 months of hard work and 6 months of listening to you and 6 months of trying to create as many commands, as many tools as we possibly could in this short space of time. We have a very nice video ready for you, which will start playing in a moment. And I just want you to be here, stay with us, stick with us. Be here till the end. It's a bit long. I agree. I accept, but I don't think you'll be disappointed. So please stay with us. And if I can request the administrators to please start the live video. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. It's been a while since we last got together. Well, lots has happened during the last 6 months. COMOSYS has received a great response from the structural engineering and detailing community. People are beginning to see how they can increase their productivity way beyond what the levels they had before. It's a cutthroat world out there, and every bit of juice we can extract out of our software is welcome. A man-hour saved is a man-hour earned, and when you're saving thousands of man-hours, the bottom line can flip to green so easily. But with this acceptance comes responsibility. And we at Proya, we want to deliver to our customers the best of the best. We at Proya listen to whatever shortcomings our customers point out. And not only do we listen, we actually put our resources in play to ensure our customers get what they're asking for. We want our customers to be even happier with our products than they are today. I'm very happy to announce that today I'll be sharing with you all the new and wonderful features we have developed for you over the last 6 months. So without further ado, let's start. Now, the next thing which I want to talk about is the IFC Import feature, which we have implemented in this version of COMOSYS. Now, IFC is fast becoming the standard mode of interoperability between programs. All the major software which we use in the construction industry, they're all trying to have IFC import and export capabilities inside their softwares. Now, as you would already know, we already had the IFC export feature inside COMOSYS. So if you go to the file menu, there is import export over here. And if you go to the export one, we already have had the IFC export feature. But as of this release, we now also have the IFC import feature implemented in COMOSYS. Before I begin talking about the details of the IFC import feature, let me just start off by saying that the IFC standard is a very generic format. And unfortunately, many programs implement it differently. So there's not a standard way of implementation of the program. So while some will implement it more intelligently than others, so in some cases you're able to extract, for example, the profile information and the material information, basically giving you the ability to convert these objects into native objects. But in some programs, the implementation is such that you're not able to convert it into your own native profiles. So I'll talk about these things as we go along, but I just wanted to say that upfront. Now let me take you through the actual steps of importing an IFC file. And for that, what we do is we just simply go to the file menu and we go to the import export section, go to the import one over here, and then select the IFC import button. When we do that, this little dialog box appears on the screen. And as you can see at the top, there is this link through which you can select the actual IFC file. I'll do that in a second. But before I do that, let me explain the options over here. So on the left-hand side, we have what are we allowed to import? We are allowed to import profiles, plates, solids, and cuts. So it will try to import all the profiles in the IFC file as native objects if possible. Plates as well as the plates as native objects, even solids. So you might have some equipment or some piping or some other architectural details which you might need to import, and even the cuts which have been implemented on top of these profiles and plates and solids. You can ask COMOSYS to import them. So as you can see, it's pretty comprehensive. And on the right-hand side over here, you have the option of converting the profiles and the plates to solids. Now, what that means is that sometimes we might not want to import the profiles as native objects. We just want to see them on the screen. We want to, work around them, but we don't want them to be converted into the native profile objects. So in those cases, what we can do is we can just say convert to solids, and the profiles and the plates will then be converted to solids. Now, like I mentioned earlier as well, IFC being a very generic format, different softwares implement the IFC standard in different ways. So sometimes they're implemented in such a way that it becomes impossible or almost impossible to convert the profiles into native objects. They can only be converted to solids in any case. So there is this option of convert any unknown profile section to solid. What that tells COMOSYS is that try to convert it to a native profile. But if you cannot, then you can convert it into a solid. Similarly, there's the option of do not import duplicate profile sections, profiles in the same location, because they'll create a clash. And you have this option of auto-generate solid level of details. So what that means is that sometimes you have generic solids which are very complex, and they have literally thousands upon thousands of polygons, and they make your rendering experience a little less enjoyable. And in those cases, what you can do is you can auto-generate the solid level of details, and it'll make the rendering faster. What you can also do over here is create 4 groups. You can give them names. And what COMOSYS will do is it'll create the same groups under the groups tab over here. And it will import the profiles into the profile group, the plates into the plate group, the solids into the solid group, and the cuts into the cuts group. And then what that'll do is it'll help you select those items separately, or maybe filter them out separately. So that's a big advantage which you can have by using the group. Now let me just actually import a file and go through the steps with you. So like I said, this is the place where we actually show the file. So let me press these 3 buttons over here. And if I were to go to my, you can browse through your using the browser to any place you want where you have kept your IFC files. And over here, I have some examples of IFC files. I've got an example of AutoCAD, another example of AutoCAD with some solids, some example from the ETABS program, an example from the Revit program, and also an example from Tekla, a Tekla example. So let me start off with the AutoCAD formwork one. Let me go inside there and see the RFC. This is an RC building IFC file. And if I say open, and if I say import, if I press the import button, I haven't made any changes over here. If I just press import, what it will do is it will bring up this new dialog box over here. And if you notice there's a material map and there's a profile map. So there are two things over here. One is a material map. It hasn't found any material definition in the IFC file. And normally these are mapping might be needed. So if it had certain materials in the IFC file, it would have shown those materials over here, and it would have asked you for the corresponding materials in COMOSYS. Similarly, if you go to the profiles, a profile map over here, it tells you that I have found a profile in the IFC file with this name, and I have found a similar profile in COMOSYS as well with this name. And this one has I found a similar one, but there's another one which wasn't really named, and so you can write your own profile, the corresponding COMOSYS profile over here. What you can do is you can either write it directly, or you can double click it over here and actually select any profile from the COMOSYS database. So once you're okay with the profile map and the material map, you can say confirm. And when you do that, it will bring in according to the mapping of the profile and the material which you have provided. And as you can see, immediately it brings in an AutoCAD file. And if you notice, it has converted them into native objects. The beams and the columns have been converted into native objects. Now let's do another example. Let's go to the IFC import once again. And this time, let's choose another file. The other one, for example, TR91110, and let's say open. Let me select that and say open. And then I can just say import. And once again, it brings me the material map. So there's one material this time, and it's undefined in the original IFC file. So I can say that bring it in as whatever ST52 material in my when you're reporting it. Similarly, if I go to the profile map, it hasn't found any profile in this whole thing. So I can just say confirm, and it is just going to bring in a solid. These are all solids. None of these have been entered in the original IFC profile, IFC file as profiles. They've all been entered as solids. So that is the reason it doesn't know what to do with them, and it can't convert them into a native object, but it can show them to you on the screen. So this is a very handy feature. What it allows you to do is even if the profiles are not convertible into local native profiles, it will still bring them on the screen, and you will be able to then work around them in your own. This time around, let's choose another IFC file, and let's choose it from a different program. So let's do an ETABS example, for example. And this file has been imported from the ETABS program, and let's open it. And once again, press the import button. This time it hasn't found any material definition inside the file, so that's interesting. If I go to the profile maps, it has found these three profiles, and it has also found the corresponding COMOSYS names in the profile database. So we can just confirm that, and immediately the file has been imported as native objects, but their material definition has been set as default because it couldn't really find any material for them. So this is once again very easy and quick way. And like I said, in this case, you can just continue your modeling directly in COMOSYS because you now have the model in the native format of COMOSYS. Now let's do a Revit example. So let me go and select my IFC import, go to my three dots over here, go to the Revit file. This has been exported from Revit. We've got more than one example. Let me just take this one, for example, and import that one. And you can see that it brings you this material map. So there's so many materials which have been defined in the Revit file, and they don't have the corresponding names in COMOSYS. So what you can, if you don't select anything, then they'll be imported with standard names. But if you want, you can actually select the corresponding names. And similarly for profiles, there's no profile; it's all generic solids. So we just say confirm. Immediately we see that the building has been imported into COMOSYS, and you can see all the details. So these are all separate pieces. If you zoom into that, even the architectural leaves and trees, they have been imported into, and you can now work around this model, which has been imported from the Revit ecosystem. So very convenient. It makes the whole process very convenient and handy. All you need to do is just go and select your IFC file, do the mapping, and you will get your. Finally, let's take you through the Tekla example. Let me press on these two dots once again. There's a Tekla model over here. We can just double click on that and press import, and it will bring in the mapping of the materials found in the Tekla model and the materials equivalent materials found in COMOSYS. And like I said, you can add those. There's also a profile map, and you can add if you don't select something, a standard default profile will be used. So let me just accept these settings right now. Press confirm, and you see that the model is being started. The COMOSYS has started the import of the model. This is a fairly large, complicated model, so it's going to take some time. The import will take certain amount of time, but it will finish the job. And there, as you see on the screen, it has finished importing the entire structure from Tekla. It's a pretty complicated structure. It has all the plates and the profiles and the generic solids, and they have been imported as intelligent objects, or as solids, depending on whether it has found a corresponding native element in COMOSYS or not. So this is an example of an IFC import from an IFC file taken from Tekla. I want to do one more example of actual equipment. So you will require in certain cases to import equipment, for example, in the form of IFC files. So I have an example over here. Let me go, it's this one, it's imported from an AutoCAD file. And let me just press that and press the import button. It starts reading the file, and then it gives us a map. Once again, as always, it takes us to this material map and the profile map. I can just say confirm. And once it's done, you can see the results on the screen. It has brought in this equipment file into COMOSYS, and now you can work your way around it and create your model around it. As I talked about, some of these objects are very complicated, and the level of detail has also been implemented. So, for example, if I were to look at this object, it's basically looking like a box. But when I zoom in, at certain point you start seeing the details, and if you see, it's a very, very detailed object with all sorts of detail inside it. And what it has done is it has allowed you to basically look at it in that way. If I zoom into that, you see the level of detail is changing. So this is a very handy and convenient way of importing equipment through the IFC format into your COMOSYS model. And we really hope that our clients really wanted the IFC import feature, because they were working with other programs and they wanted to continue in COMOSYS after having done their basic work in the other software, and they wanted to continue the detailing inside COMOSYS. So with this feature now, which we have implemented in this new version of COMOSYS, we hope that you will really enjoy working with COMOSYS even more. Another interoperability feature which I want to talk about is the new export to SAP2000 feature, which we have added to COMOSYS in this version. Many of our clients are already using the SAP2000 software for analysis and design of structures, and sometimes they feel the need that they get models from other places, or they want to import into COMOSYS or export from COMOSYS. And the real need which they feel is they want to confirm the analysis results inside COMOSYS, because they're familiar with the SAP2000 interface. So there were a lot of requests in this regard.
So what we did was we added, if you go to the file menu and go to the import export menu, under the export menu, we previously had only the SAP 2000 version 7 export, which was pretty outdated. But now we've added the SAP 2000 version 22. And all you need to do is just click on that, and you can select any place. You can just give it a name, any file name which you want. And once you do that, the file will be exported to the location. And what it does is it creates two files. One is the S2K file, but more than that, it also exports a PRO file, which is the profile section database. And the advantage this gives you is that basically the entire database as it appears in COMOSYS is exported to the SAP library as well. And that what that results is that you can actually compare the analysis results, and they will be exact to whatever fifth decimal place if you want. Because normally the section properties in two different programs can be slightly different. The moment of inertia, for example, the radii of gyration, the cross-sectional areas, those kinds of things. And if there are minor variations, then that leads to minor differences in the analysis results as well. So we didn't. Because we knew that the reason why our clients were requesting for this feature was because they wanted to compare the results. So we basically exported the exact section parameters which were on the COMOSYS side, and now by the simple click, the user can just go to the SAP 2000 side, import the S2K files along with the PRO file. And the only thing they need to do is that inside the S2K file, there is a reference to the PRO file, which is the section parameters. And there's a path, local path. So this local path is basically dependent on your machine. So if you're giving it to someone else to use, then you need to change the path of the PRO file given in the S2K. This is a simple find and replace command. You just look for all the instances where the PRO file has been mentioned, and then quickly find and replace with the new path, and you will be able to use it.
Now, once you do that, once you export your S2K file and your PRO, which is the section properties file, and you go into your SAP 2000 application, you will see that the entire model, along with the loads and the load combinations, basically everything you need to just press the run button, has been transported, has been exported into the application. And this will be a very convenient way for you to compare the analysis results and the design results if need be, and see how accurate COMOSYS' analysis engine is.
Now let's talk about some analysis and design features which we have incorporated in the new version of COMOSYS. Let me begin with seismic design options. So normally seismic design is carried out either through the equivalent static method or through a proper dynamic analysis, which requires modal analysis or time history analysis. But a lot of times the user is required to do an equivalent static analysis for multi-story buildings. Now, in the new version of COMOSYS we have introduced, if I go to the analysis and design and go to my load case and go to the create, edit, load case and combinations, over here, you must have seen this dialog box before. We've got the load case tab, the load combo, response spectrum, etc. But if I go to the load case one, and I can actually create a new load case. I can call it earthquake in the X direction, for example, and I can give it the type of it's an earthquake load. But and of course other parameters might need to be entered. But what I want to show right now is this auto static equivalent static load option, with which you can use. We've got some options available right now, and we'll keep adding new design standards to it. So you just choose the design the earthquake equivalent static design equivalent static load standard which you want to use. And once you do that, you can this parameters tab opens up, and you can connect on that, click on that, and here you have all the parameters related to the equivalent static design according to that particular code. Hey, for example, you can specify the direction, the floor diaphragm eccentricity, whether the elevation range should be calculated automatically or user defined. The period calculation can be automatic or user defined. Similarly, the number of floors can be automatically detected by the program, or you can specify them. Then, of course, these parameters are code specific, standard specific. Every standard will have slightly different names and interpreting ways of these parameters. And here, for this particular standard, you can see that it asks for the short period spectral acceleration SS, the 1 second spectral acceleration, the transition period, the solid class, etc. And these, or usually all of these, basically end up with a certain with the single parameter, but every standard will have its own way of getting there. So what we are doing now is we are adding, we will be adding several more of these in the coming versions. But it's going to be very easy. Once you have this set up, you just say okay, and then this load case will automatically generate its own equivalent static loads in whatever direction that you've asked it to.
Now let's move on to a very important feature, a very important capability which we have added to the COMOSYS version of 2023, and that has to do with the supported design standards. Now, as you know, as our existing users will know, if you go to the design settings, we had these options of the American ASD, the American LRFT, the Eurocode 3, the TS 648, and some new Turkish codes. But now we have added this option of IS 800, which is the Indian steel code. And this is just a sneak peek into the future. They haven't been added now. But at the moment, we have the IS 800 steel design standard, which is applicable in the Indian market. Now, obviously, this is not a video on to teach how to do steel design in COMOSYS. There are other videos which teach that. The purpose of this video is basically to explain the new design standard. So you will obviously be entering your building the way you normally do. You'll be entering your loads and your load combinations and whatever needs to be done, and then you will run the model. And once you will run the model, you can then select either all of the elements, or you can do a one-click design. As you know, you can select all of them and you can check what their existing states are. So let me select this element over here and go to the check selected option over here. Like I said, you can select all of them and say you cannot select any one, just say check all. But let me just go and check the selected one. And when I do that, immediately it does the design check of that beam, for example, according to the Indian standard. Now, what I want to do is I want to see what the results are. So I can once again go to the same one, or over here, in fact, it says design data. And if I press that, it will open up this tab over here, which will show the summarized design data of that beam which we have selected. So it gives the name of the profile, it gives the name, it gives the classification of the section. Over here, we have all the critical loads and which combo they occurred in. So it will tell you that the location is 600 centimeters. This is the axial load. This is the M22. This is the M33. The shear loads in the second direction, the third direction, the torsion value. Similarly, the section properties are given over here. The other geometric properties of the section are given over here. This is where the meat of the Indian code is. So you will see the TD value, which is related to the Indian standards. This will all, of course, be given in these units, which you have at the bottom right of the screen. The PD value, the MDY, MDZ, MNDY, all the engineers who are designing according to the Indian standards will know what I'm talking about. MNDZ, KSI, KSI, LT, the alpha 1, the alpha 2 values, these are all related to the buckling coefficients. PDY, PDZ, all these values are then used into the basic axial bending 2.2 and bending 3.3 components of the total design stress. So this is 0.607, which should be less than 1. And so basically it's satisfying the condition. Similarly, you have your shear checks over here in the 2 direction and your shear check in the 3rd direction. Both of them are given over here. You have the VD2 value, the V critical value in the 2 direction. The tau B2 value is given over there, and the ratio the design ratio is 0.277. Once again, should be less than 1. Similarly, in the third direction, we have very low shear values, so the ratio is very small. If you want, you can even get a deflection check. So over here, it is 1.135, less than 1.2 centimeters, which is okay. All these are details which you already know regarding how to do the design. Obviously, the deflection check has got nothing to do with the Indian standards. But this top part over here is what I'm talking about. All your axial stresses, your bending 2 stresses, and your bending 3 stresses, all are summarized over here. And the variables which are used to compute these 3 numbers are summarized in this column over here. We are hoping this will be a great improvement for our clients in India. Lots of them were requesting this feature, that they wanted to do the steel design within COMOSYS and then continue with the detailing. So with this new version coming out now, you have this ability to design with the IS800 design standard.
Now let's talk about some macro related features which we've added to COMOSYS in this version. So the first thing I want to talk about is that we had a lot of requests from our clients that they wanted an extra option in the angle cleat macros. So if you remember, the angle cleat macros would connect a beam to a beam with an angle cleat, or a beam to a column with an angle cleat, and the cleat would be welded to the secondary and bolted to the primary. Now our clients requested that we have an extra option of having bolts on both sides. So we've added that option in this version. So now we have the bolted to secondary side or welded to secondary side option. And if we choose the bolted one, then we can create bolts on both sides of the connection. The next thing which I want to talk about is the flange extension with cut macro. This is quite often used in the offshore industry. And what is needed is that you want to widen the flange at a certain area, at a certain point along the beam or whatever element it is. And you want to widen the flange because something is sitting on that. So for that, we have added this flange extension, and it's very simple to use. All you do is you select the beam, and then you select a point on the beam, and you can do that very easily with the direct entry method, as you know. So you can say DY2000, and that will give you a point on the beam from on the beam wherever you want, basically. And then you can put another one ahead of it. And when you do that, it will create a flange extension at that point by cutting out the flange of the beam, and replacing it with a plate, one of the available thickness plates, and it will basically create this widened flange along between those 2 points. And what you can do that, you can go inside and you can change this distance 2000 to whatever number which you actually want. For example, so I can make it shorter, I can make it longer, I can make it left aligned or right aligned. As you can see over here, I can make it left aligned like that. I can put it in the middle of the 2 selected points, or I can make it right aligned with the other one. Let's make it middle for the moment. And what you can do further beyond this is you have total control over the plates, the stiffness below. You can create as many as you want, and you can increase the width over there and all that. All these parameters are available over here. You can set your macro presets as always. And this is a very convenient way to widen the flange. We had a similar macro before as well, which is the normal flange extension. But this one actually creates 2 side plates. It doesn't really cut the flange. It adds 2 extra plates. This new one actually cuts the flange and inserts a plate at those points and gives you a widened. Now let's talk about the welded beam-to-beam fixed connection. This is very convenient when you have a beam-to-beam fixed connection. And normally floor beams, we have simple connections, but occasionally with cantilevers or things like that, we have fixed connections. And there are different ways to do that. We can either have a bolted one, but then typically the problem is that the size of the main and the size of the secondary is not the same. So the bottom flange creates a problem, and the bottom flange pushes in or out and actually hurts the web of the main member. What is needed is something which can sort of convert the incoming secondary beam into a larger size just when it is about to hit the main beam. And for that, we have developed the welded beam-to-beam fixed connection. This is also used in the offshore industry a lot. So all you do is you basically select the main beam and you select the secondary beam, and immediately you have this connection in which plates are used. The flange, the web of the secondary is cut out. So if I were to just show this one only, for example, you can see that the web has been cut out. And if I were to show all, again, a plate has been inserted in the location of the web in this way, and the flange has been extended, it has been continued in such a way that it hits the bottom flange of the main. Now, there is another option inside this macro. So let me connect another one over here. But there's this option if you go inside the macro, in which you can ask it to use either plates or the same profile itself if possible. So this one is with a caveat that it's not possible with certain sizes because of the angles involved. But if you use the beam option, then what it will do is it will use this very same profile. So this is an IPE 200. It will use a cutout piece of an IPE 200 and create that. It will widen it basically to meet the bottom flange of the main member. Once again, this is a very convenient option. You have your welds over here and over here, and now you have a fixed connection between the two beams, and there is no problem with the bottom flange pressing into. Another connection which is very popular in the offshore industry is the welded pipe bracing connection, as you can see in the icon as well. It's very common for large pipes, CHS profiles, to be coming in to the beam. And it's also not uncommon that the profiles, the bracing profiles, are actually wider than the beam itself. So the flange of the beam is narrow. So for the connection, the flange needs to be widened. And we just talked about the widening, the macro which does the widening. But here it's like a combination of this one and the normal connection. All we need is a welded connection between the two. And what it does is, what this particular macro does is, if I were to just select this one, for example, it asks us to select the beam and then the braces. So I can select the two and I can right click. And when I do that, you can see that it widens the flange according to the need, and it creates a welded connection between the pipes and the plate, which has been basically used as an insert into the flange. The flange has been cut out and a plate has been inserted to widen it. And we have as many stiffeners as we want below. It's a very, the interface is complete, and we can basically have as many of those plates as we want, and we can give it whatever width that might be needed in the circumstances. But the idea is that you can just directly connect your welded braces to the beam, no matter how wide they are, because it's going to widen the flange anyways. And that's a very convenient way of creating this connection. This, like I said, once again, is very popular in the offshore industry. Now let's talk about some pre-engineered building macros, which we have developed in this version of COMOSYS. Now, as you know, pre-engineered buildings are very common. They're very commonly used throughout the world, and there are certain connections which are repeatedly used in these types of structures. And one of them is the purlin connection, in which the Z profile is used. And the connection is basically can be explained like this: that the Z profile is extended on each side, and then they're connected by bolts and a plate. And then we also have sometimes we have struts to basically connect to the bottom flange of the supporting beam. Now, very simply, what we can do is we can use the normal purlin connection, select the main beam, select the Z profiles, and we get our standard angle connection or whatever the default is. But if we go inside the macro now, we have this option of the overlapped Z. And if we select that, you will see on the screen, if we select that, immediately an overlapped Z connection is created. And what that means is that this purlin is extended to the other side, the other one is extended into the first one, and we have a plate connecting the two with 4 bolts. But then there are other bolts as well, which are just connecting the two purlins to each other at these points, according to the need. And what we can do with these now is, if I press the M enter button, I can go to the Z purlin tab, which is new, and I can actually ask for these struts to be created. And these struts will automatically change the IDs of the bolts as well. And if I do that, immediately those struts are created on either side of the connection. And now, since the bolt IDs are different, so this is a single bolt now because it's going through the strut as well, and this is a separate bolt. These two are one ID, and these four are one ID because they're going through the plate as well as the other one. So this is a very handy way of creating this new Perlin Z-type Perlin overlapped Perlin connection, which we have now added to COMOSYS for in order for the connection of or for the creation of pre-engineered buildings. Now let's talk about another macro which is used in the pre-engineered buildings sector, and that is the tapered end plate splice. And it's very common to have elements which are tapered, and one of them is tapered, the other one is straight, or both of them are tapered. And you need an end plate splice connection for such situations. So what we have developed is what you can see on the screen, the tapered splice connection. And all you need to do is just select it, select the first member and select the second member, and immediately your complicated end plate splice connection with all the options of creating bolts in the different locations and the stiffness is created for you. This is very convenient, very easy to use, and it can be used not only for columns, but also when you have some similar situation in the. Let's continue with more pre-engineered building connections. So another situation which is very common is for these wind columns on the facade to go and hit the roof beam, and over there we have connections from the bottom side to the bottom flange of the roof beam. And for that, we have developed this PEB end plate to flange connection. And this is very simple to use. All you need to do is just select the main beam and then select the column. And once you do that, immediately this connection is created. The bottom flange is cut out, and this plate replaces it because widening is needed at times. And another end plate is given at the end of the column. And you can have complete control over where the bolts are and whether the stiffener will be created or not. But this is very convenient connection, allows you to connect the column to the bottom side of the beam when the column is facing in this strong direction. Now, it is also possible that the column is not, the strong direction of the column is along this line rather than perpendicular to the beam. And this kind of situation is also possible. So the same macro works for that case as well. Once again, just select the beam and the column, and the connection is made with the same style. You have different styles inside. I didn't open those up to show before, but you can have the option of two-sided plates or one plate which with the bottom flange cut out, or you can have two plates at the sides as well. So once again, a very convenient way with complete control to create your PEB end plate to the flange connection. Now, moving on with pre-engineered buildings, we come to this very important connection between the column and the beam. And this is perhaps the most important connection of the structure. It is a moment connection, and it is done in different flavors and different styles. And usually we have very large panel zone shear forces in this area as well. So we've developed the knee connection for this case, and it's very simple to use. All you need to do is select the column and then select the beam, and immediately a very well-defined connection is made. And if you can see, because of this panel zone over here, a lot of times the thickness of the plate is not enough of the incoming beam, so you need a thicker plate over here. So this one basically cuts out the web of the tapered member in that area. So if I were to just show that one, for example, if I say show only, you can see that the element has been cut out like that. Let me go back to showing everything. And a plate has been put in there in place of the web, and it's a thicker plate than the web. And you can obviously change the thicknesses according to your need. But this one basically creates this connection, puts in the stiffeners. You have complete control over the bolts. You can even have this little extension over there, depending on where your purlins are. And you have, like I said, complete control over the bolts as well. So this allows you to create this very complicated connection with a few clicks. You replace the web of the beam. You replace it with a thicker plate, and you have a working connection for this kind of situation, which is very common in PEB type structures. Now, another way of doing this connection is to, instead of cutting the web out and replacing it with a plate, You can also have doubler plates. So you can let the beam run through, and you can have 2 plates on the back and front side. And that's the doubler plate option, because basically, like I said, you have these high stress, shear stresses in this area. And in this case, we have another option. We can use the column and the beam. Instead of cutting the actual web, so this, if I just show this only, you can see that the web has not been cut. It continues till the end. But what we have is these extra plates which have been added. And these are doubler plates, and they've been welded to the web to thicken it in that area. And this very convenient option then allows you to, and the stiffness have been modified according to that, to basically reduce the panel zone stresses. But that's not all. There is another way of doing the same connection. And once again, let me go in and choose the column and the beam. And this time what we have is the diagonal stiffener. This is another way of making the same, of reducing the panel zone stresses. You basically put in a diagonal stiffener from end to end. And we have complete control over the geometry. And the good thing about this is that instead of 3 different macros, all of them have been collected into this one single macro, and within that macro you have these options of creating this diagonal stiffener or doubler plates, or basically the removal of the web and insertion of a thicker plate to take care of those high stresses. So this is a very important macro which we've added. It's called the knee connection, and it is there for, like I said, the pre-engineered building sector. And this connection is everywhere. It's rampant. And if you can see with these new features, we can easily now connect our pre-engineered buildings very, very quickly with the knee connection, with the Z-purlin overlap Z-purlin connection, with the tapered splice connection, and all the things we've talked about. We can easily now very quickly go through our pre-engineered buildings. Now, after having gone through these major improvements, which really make the modeling of pre-engineered buildings very, very easy and very, very fast, let me also talk about some minor changes we have made in some existing macros. So previously, the base plate macro only worked with non-tapered sections. But what we've done now is that you can use the same base plate macro with a tapered column, and once again you can create the base plate very, very easily. Another very important improvement which we have done is that now the bolted gusset and the gusset macros in general, they also work with the tapered profile. So here you see that the bolted gusset macro has been used to connect this roof bracing to the tapered profile. Previously, this was not possible. You needed to do some things manually. And now you can very easily just use the normal bolted gusset connection with the tapered elements, and your macro is done very quickly for you. Similarly, your girt macro and the other options for the girt and purlin macros now also work. All these options now also work for tapered members. Whenever the tapered member is the main member, previously you could not connect using these macros, but now you can with the new version of COMOSYS. So that is a brief summary of the macros that we've added in this new version. As you can see, we've talked about a lot of macros regarding the offshore industry, regarding the pre-engineered building sector, general improvements and all. There's a lot we have done in the last 6 months, and the user will be much more satisfied with the new version. And we've been listening to our clients, like I said, but this was a brief summary of only the macros which have been added to COMOSYS. And as you can see very easily, these will really help you get your modeling done much faster.
The next feature which I want to talk about is the implementation of Imperial Units on the drawing side of COMOSYS. Now, this is a feature which was requested heavily by our clients in the US market, and also those who are working for the US market, because they heavily use the foot-inch system a lot. So what we have done now is that on the drawing side, as you know, we have the dimensions, and the dimensions previously would have the units of millimeters or centimeters or one of those. But now we have brought this new option. If I were to double click on any one of these dimensions, you can see that the dimension property editor has changed slightly. First of all, we now have this option of showing the unit as well. So if I press this one and say apply, you can see in which units for that particular dimension we have the units which we have turned on. So that's one extra feature which now the user can use, and they can have multiple dimensions in the same drawing, and some of them can be millimeters and some of them can be centimeters or some other unit, and they can specify there and directly on the dimension itself what the unit is. But what I'm talking about right now is the Imperial units, and for this we have made modifications to these three inputs. Some of them are new and some of them have been modified. So there's this unit option which is now appearing over here. When you open that, there is the option of millimeters, centimeters, meters, centimeter per meter. That's a new option. There's a foot inch option now, which is the one we're going to talk about. There's an inch option, once again related to the Imperial units, and also a feet option. So these three are what we will be talking about. And besides this unit option, there is another option for the precision. And previously we had this, we didn't have this variable directly in this form. Now we have these different precision levels, and the first ones are typically used in millimeters. So rounded off to the nearest 0.25, rounded off to the nearest 10th or 100th or 1000th. But now we have added these three extra ones, which is rounded off to the nearest 8th, nearest 16th, and the nearest 32, 1 over 32. So this is another precision variable which we've added to the dimension. And in the format section, you will see that in addition to the previous ones which we could use, now, first of all, you can choose them directly from a pull down combo box. But at the end, you will see that there's this extra option of slash divided by slash. This is the one we will be using frequently. So let me just start off and give you an example. First of all, let me go to the feet option over here and say apply. And when you do that, you see that now those numbers have been, so it says it's 3.314 feet. Now, the reason it's giving it in decimal format like that is because of my format variable. The format variable, if I don't want it like that, I can select this newly added option, which is the slash divided by slash option. And if I do that, then you will see that it gives me, now it says it's 3 feet, 157th over 500th of a foot. Now, this is an odd way of saying that, but the reason for that is this precision variable now. Now, with the foot inch system, the most commonly used precision variables are 1 over 8 or 16 or 32. So let me choose the 1 over 32 variable for this and say apply. And immediately you see that it is 3 feet 5/16 of a foot. Now you might be wondering why didn't it give this number to be 32? The reason why it does that is because whatever number it found, it could be further divided to a smaller number, so it automatically converts it, the 1 over 32 format, into a 1 over 16th format, because the number is convertible to that. But this one, for example, it is 27 over 32, so it has remained in that form. So using these three new ones, so now if I were to, for example, change this feet one into inch and say apply, it will say, okay, it's 39 inches and 3/4 of an inch. This one is 39 3/4, this one is 39 3/4, and this one is 46 1 over 16th. Like I said before, despite the fact that I have chosen this 1 over 32 option, it will round it off downwardly if it's perfectly divisible by a smaller multiplier. So if I change this, for example, to 1 over 8, maybe it'll change that. Yeah, so it changes this one in that case. Now, like I showed you in the beginning as well, there was this foot inch option as well, which then goes, so it basically converts it into some feet and some inches. And when we do that, now it says it's 3 feet 3/4 of an inch and 3 feet 10 1/8 of an inch. So these are very convenient, and they've been added, these Imperial units, like I said, primarily for the US market, or for those who are working with the US market. You now have the option of showing the units as well. Obviously, showing the units in this case is meaningless because you're already seeing the units on the screen. But when you're working with millimeters or centimeters or other units besides feet inch, you can open up this show unit option as well. So this is a this is a new feature. This is not only available in the general arrangement drawings, but also for your part drawings and your assembly drawings. All you need to do is just change the settings of the dimensions to whatever unit style you desire, and the part drawings and the assembly drawings will be created accordingly. The next thing which I want to talk about is regarding the improvements which we have made in the table object in COMOSYS. Now, as you know, the table object can be created anywhere in your drawings. And this table object is used by the automatic drawings as well, like your part drawings and your assembly drawings or any other drawing. And you can also create this table object manually if you wanted to. Now, the first very useful thing which we've added to these tables is that now if you move them around, they snap to corners of objects. So if you notice, if I bring it close to this view, it snaps to that view. If you bring it close to the top right corner, it will just snap to the top right corner. If you bring it from the outside, it will snap from the outside. Similarly, if I were to take it down, let's make it go over here. If I were to zoom into the top right corner of the or the bottom left corner or the top left corner, you can see that it is snapping to these. Similarly, if I take it over here, I can make it snap to this view over here. So this ability to now snap to any of the four corners of the nearby objects has been added, and this really helps the user in aligning tables to other tables to the papers, to the whatever paper size you're using, or to even viewports. The next feature which we have added to the table is the ability to now enter multi-line text inside a cell. So previously, inside the cell, we could just have one text, one line text. But now if we double click on any one of these texts, the text dialog box appears. And if we want, we can write a multi-line text over there, pressing enter, multi-line text over there. And when we press OK, then that multi-line text appears in that cell. And previously, this was not possible. Now let's talk about text rotation inside the cells. So for that, if I double click on this table and I go to the second tab, Cells tab, I can see that it has 4 rows. And if I select, for example, this is row number 2, if I select the second row, I can see the contents in the columns. These are the 3 columns, and they all have the text, namely text inside them, as you can see on the screen as well. So if I can select any one of these columns, and let's say I select the first one, and now if I go and select this text rotation option, so if I select that and give it a 90-degree rotation and say apply, then the text is changed. The text is now given a 90-degree rotation and becomes a vertical text. If I want, I can change the location. I can put it on the left side or on the right side. And if I want, I can even give it an offset from this using this parameter. And this offset is then applied to the alignment. So as you can see, the alignment can be set from left, middle, right, and from top, middle, bottom in those senses as well. And furthermore, offsets can be given to it. And these are features which weren't available before. We can, of course, change the 90-degree to a 180-degree text, which will basically reverse it. Or we can give it a 270-degree text, which will make it look down. So we have these 4 angle options. And if you bring it back to 0, then the text comes back to its original location. Now, another thing which we can do is that, for example, if I were to double click on this text and write a long sentence, let's say I write the quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog and enter that. Now, as you can see, the length of this sentence is enough to basically cross over into the other cell, and I don't want that. I want it to wrap inside within the same cell. So what I can do in that case is I can select the table, go to the second row, select this text from here, and say wrap text. And when I say wrap text, then that text can be wrapped inside that particular cell, as you can see on the screen. If I come back to this text rotation feature and convert this long wrap text into a vertical text, for example, by choosing the 90-degree option, you can see that I can even do that, and it now wraps in the other direction. So this is very useful, and you can create lots of different combinations and styles for some very specialized tables which you might have. Now, of course, you have complete control over the height of each row and each column and that kind of thing. So if I see that this is not fitting perfectly, what I can go is just select the second row and give it a different height, for example, and the height will be adjusted according to whatever I want. One very handy feature which wasn't available before is the ability to merge cells. So if I wanted to merge this cell and this cell, all I need to do is select the text of the first one, press Control, select the second one, right-click, and say merge the selected cells. And when I do that, immediately the middle border is removed and the whole thing becomes one cell. And even the texts of each individual of both the cells are maintained in their respective orientations. So if I wanted to double click on this text, I can take it to the side, for example, and even if I wanted to give it an offset, for example, of 12 or whatever number I want. So now I have this merged cell in which I have control over the texts which were there inside the original cells as well. So this ability to merge the cell is very handy. And if I'm not happy with that, I can just select the cell and right click and say explode the selected cells. And when I do that, the two cells are brought back to their original positions. This merging, incidentally, can also be done vertically. So if I select this text and this text and say merge cells, then those two are merged together now. But now, obviously, the individual text. So if this one is a vertical text, the other one is like that. I can take that in there and say I want to take it to the right, and from there I can give it or I can take it to the middle, and that's probably enough in this case. So I can do stuff like this. I can merge vertical cells as well. So this is a very handy feature which allows you to build very complicated tables if need be. Another feature which we have is now if you select the table itself, you see that these handles appear on the left-hand side. And they're there to add new rows or to subtract or delete existing ones. So if I just press this plus button over here, another row is added. If I press this one, another one is added. If I press another one is added. And it's as simple as that. You can then, of course, like I said, move it around and make it snap to whatever position that you want. But this really makes the addition and subtraction. If I wanted to remove one, for example, if I wanted to remove this last one, I'll just need to remove it like that. So this is a very handy feature as well, which has been now added to the standard table object which we have in COMOSYS. Now let's talk about another feature, which is the ability to create containers within these cells. So let me just create a container first. Let me, for example, create a little circle over here. You can use these objects which we have in COMOSYS, as you know, to create all kinds of shapes and sizes and whatever you want. So let me just zoom in and say I want to do something like this. I want to create a horizontal line. And then I want to create, for example, another rectangle somewhere over here like that. And this is a shape which I want. I can make it more complicated, of course, but this much is enough to explain the feature. What I need to do is I can convert this whole thing into a group. So I have this group option over here. And when I press that, I can give that thing a name. I can call it whatever. Let's call it G1. And now this is G1. This whole thing is G1. And the G1 can be moved around. It has nothing to do with the table at the moment. It's a separate drawing I have made on the side. But if I go inside now, if I double click on the table, go to the cells and go to my first row, for example, and the second text, which is this one. And if I say convert to container, now when I say that, this container list comes up and the G1 which I just created is given to me. And when I do that, it is converted into a container. And now the the container fills that cell. So this is another handy feature which we have, which allows us to actually put different shapes and symbols which we have created inside COMOSYS, inside any cell which we want. After having created this, put this container inside this cell, what I can also do, of course, is give it some orientation. So I can put the middle orientation like that, and it's put in the middle. I can take it to the left if I want, like that. I can give it further offset, so I can, basically give it it behaves just like a text. So I can create any shape. The shape can include other things as well, and the whole group will be put inside this text. So this will allow you to put things like maybe some logos or some shapes which you want in your table. Sometimes we have very specific requirements. We want to show a steel profile, the cross section of a profile, and this kind of thing is usually difficult to do in tables. But with this feature, you can create these containers, groups, and then put them inside your tables very easily.
Now let me talk about some database improvements which we have made in this new version of COMOSYS. And as you know, we are expanding globally and new markets are being reached. So we are constantly adding new profiles and new bold databases, profile databases to our existing database. And what I want to talk about right now is that we made some, if I were to double click on this beam, for example, you can, if I press this button over here, as you know, which is used to open the profiles database, you can see that this area has been renewed in general. And what you're seeing on the screen is that we've added the Russian profile set. The eye profiles, all the eye profiles are there. In addition to the eye profiles, the pipe profiles are there as well. The angles, the channels, all of them have been added to the database. And with this capability now, our clients using the Russian interface will be able to add the Russian profiles directly from within COMOSYS. They won't need to add the profiles separately, but we'll be providing these profiles off the shelf. Now, as you can also see that with each profile, their ghost related description, the ghost standard related description has also been added. So this is very convenient, and this information can later be used directly in the templates which we have also provided. Now let's continue with the improvements we've made regarding the Russian market. And I want to talk a little about the templates which we have provided, automatic off-the-shelf templates which we have provided. So here you can see on the screen, there's a little structure which I've created. It's just simple 4 columns, 4 beams, some floor beams, some connections and some base plates, etc. It can be much more complex, as you know. But once you have created your structure and you have done your numbering, which you know, and you've done your drawing settings for the assembly drawings and the part drawings and the layout settings, etc., which are provided off the shelf. They're very simple to do, and they've been explained in some other videos. All you need to do is just select any part, right-click it, say create drawing, and say create assembly drawing. Or similarly, you could go to any part, say right-click, and say create a part drawing. Or like we already know, we could just select the whole building, right click, and say create the part or assembly drawings, depending on our settings. Now, when we do that, let me go to the drawings. I've created the assembly drawing and the part drawing of this plate, and I'm going to show them to you. So if I were to go to the drawing side by double clicking on that button and opening the drawings manager, I can see that the plate, the drawing of that single part has been created over here. And if I were to open that and zoom into that, you can see that the plate, the drawing has been created, the plate has been dimensioned, the single part drawing is pretty clear, and you have all the customization options, which you know. But on the right hand side, you can see that the template has been provided off the shelf for the single part drawings. And it is exactly in accordance with the standards, with the ghost standards. and all the title blocks and all the titles have been given, the headings have been given. The format is exactly in accordance with the requirements. If I were to go down, then we also see the title block over here, and this one is also provided exactly in accordance with the Russian standards. And we have the capabilities. I'm not going to show them over here of including signatures as well as all the customized information which we have in the title block. So this is very convenient. All you need to do is just create your model. And once you've created your model, you do the numbering and you just right click on any part, and the part drawing will be created, as you've seen, directly off the shelf without any customization being needed. Now let's move on to the assembly drawing of the column which I talked about. And let me double click on that drawing and open it. And as you can see, once again, the drawing is pretty neat and clean. The column was slightly complicated, but we have all the single parts and everything over here. But more importantly, once again, we have the off-the-shelf tables, the assembly tables directly without any customization being needed. All you need to do is just create your model and create the drawings. And as you can see on the screen, this is exactly in accordance with the requirement of the market, with the requirement of the standards. And the assembly drawing has been given, the individual pieces have been given, the material summary has been given as well. So this is exactly what we want. We don't want to waste a lot of time customizing these blocks, which are pretty complicated and they require a lot of effort. But we have taken that, we have made that effort, and we have created these off-the-shelf tables for you. And it's not just the part drawings and the assembly drawings for which we have created the tables for you. Let me go back to the drawing manager and open a general arrangement drawing over here. Over here we have it's just an empty drawing. I haven't added anything on it. You can see the whole structure over here, or you could filter it if you wanted to. You could see part of the structure. But whatever you're seeing in the views, what you could do is you could go to your tables, you go open your steel tables, and over here we have the option of creating the steel assembly detail and part detail tables, which we just saw. But I'm going to be talking about or showing you the rolled metal specification table as well. So if I just press that button, it's going to take whatever it sees in the drawing. And if I were to zoom in over there, you can see that it has created this very nice table, exactly according to the size specifications, the height of the rows, the width of the columns, the titles, all the contents have been taken from the model. As you can see, it's very neat, very clean. No customization is required from the user. It comes directly off the shelf. When you buy COMOSYS, you get these tables with it. So this is very handy and very useful. It saves a lot of time, a lot of customization time, because normally when clients, when users buy such advanced software, they spend months sometimes trying to get these tables ready for the market. But we are providing them off the shelf and you can use them directly. The last thing which I want to talk about now is the drawing list template, which we have also provided in this version of COMOSYS off the shelf. And as you know, in the drawings manager, you can have hundreds of drawings. You can have lots of part drawings, assembly drawings. You can filter those drawings in this table. You can create a list of only the GA drawings, for example. You can create a drawing list of only the assembly drawings or the part drawings, or basically any selection of drawings which you do. But once you do that, you can using that filter, you can create an empty drawing called the drawing list, and you can go inside that. And you can actually, if you were to, what you can actually do is you can create this drawing table, the table of the drawing list inside that empty drawing, and it can be exactly according to the filter which you have. Whatever names you have given to the drawings, they will appear over here. There'll be a serial number, and you can have your own remarks or notes as well if you want to. So very handy, very, very useful features once again. We hope that the market will be able to use COMOSYS as it is directly off the shelf, and that's, in our opinion, very important.
And now I come to a major announcement. This is something which our clients have been asking for a long time. No matter how many commands we have, no matter how many components we include in COMOSYS, the fact remains that in every country, in every company, things are done slightly differently. Everyone wants their unique flavor of detailing to be included, but this is not always possible since it creates unnecessary clutter for the others. Similarly, many a times we have special needs based on the special needs of a particular project. What is the solution? Yes, you guessed it, an API which allows our advanced users to develop their own custom components and commands. This ability which we are introducing with this release of COMOSYS will free you from any shackles. COMOSYS already provides our users with amazing features which get things done in hours where others take days. But now, with our new .NET-based API, you will be able to do in minutes or even seconds what COMOSYS does in hours. I want to invite all those out there who are already developing custom components for other softwares to use our API and give us their feedback. This is a beta version, which means that we will be refining it even further to include many commands which will make our API better than that of our competitors. The good thing is that you don't need to be an advanced programmer to use our API. Any language of the .NET platform can be used to develop your own components now. It is as simple as 1, 2, 3. We are including sample codes for the creation of the basic objects, as well as a sample code for the creation of a simple macro. Just follow the instructions given in our quick start guide and get started within hours. We want to have a strong community around the COMOSYS ecosystem. We want thousands of developers developing components for COMOSYS worldwide. In fact, if you like the challenge, you can get used to our API and let us know, and maybe we can even find ways to collaborate. We feel this addition to COMOSYS will be a game changer. So what languages can you use? As I'd already mentioned, you can use any language which is available on the .NET platform, which includes C#. So all you need to do is start typing and it will suggest the various options which you have. And then you can continue with your other options over there, and it can offer you whatever other options which you might require. And you can basically select as easily as that, and the entire COMOSYS framework will be available for you. Like I said, you can use C#, you can use Visual Basic as well, and you can even use the other languages associated with the .NET platform. Now, what we will be providing you is a quick start guide, which will take you through the steps of creating your own project inside the .NET framework using the API DLL, which we will provide our users. And you can go through this document, and it will take you step by step to create your own project. And then you can basically use the templates which we have provided to create your own tools or to create your own macros, either components or just commands, which you can then program by basically filling in those blank templates, which we will provide you. And once you're done with those, you'll find that the whole system is extremely easy to use, and a good programmer who has some experience in similar API development will probably be up and running in a couple of days. In addition to the quick start guide, which helps you set up your initial DLL project, what we also provide you is this COMOSYS.NET API documentation, where you have all the class structure for the COMOSYS, the geometry, the forms, the geometric classes, whatever we have built in right now, the functions which are available. They are given in this file, and you can use them to browse through the available functions. And if something is not available, then you can develop that on your own as well. So how easy is it? It's extremely easy. Once you're done with your program, once you're done with your coding, all you need to do is just compile it, and the .NET project will be compiled in the form of a DLL. So you will, at the end of your project, you will get a DLL. Obviously, it can have a different name. It will have the name you give it. And all you need to do is take this DLL from your project and then copy it to the COMOSYS directory. So inside the COMOSYS directory, there's a plugins directory. And all you do is you go inside this plugins directory and you copy your DLL inside that directory. That's all you need to do. Once you're done with that, you can open your COMOSYS application. And now on the right-hand side, besides the normal components which we provide, you will also get this new user API components tab at the end. And inside this component, lo and behold, will be the macro that you have created. And you can create your own icons. You can create even sub-levels below this user API components. You can have steel macros, concrete macros, whatever you want, whatever it is that you basically want. But here I'm just going to show you this one single example. All you need to do is, it works just like a macro. You click on the button. This is a very simple end plate connection between a column and a beam. You select the column, you select the beam, and the macro is created. Once again, it has all the features. You can press M and the macro button will be selected. It works just like a local COMOSYS macro, which you have already seen. Like I said, what we are foreseeing right now is that we are foreseeing many of our clients who have the capabilities developing their own components, developing their own tools, developing their own macros. And what we are seeing that in the coming months and years, the COMOSYS ecosystem will grow tremendously because of this new API, exposed API feature, which we are providing with this version. And now for the final feature. The final feature which I want to talk about is actually more than just a feature, it's a capability which, in my opinion, separates the men from the boys, if you will. Now, very few programs, in fact, only one comes to mind readily, has this capability. And that is because most softwares out there don't really deal with very large models. But as you've seen, COMOSYS does so very easily. So perhaps you've guessed what I'm talking about. It is the new multi-user capability, which we are now branding as our Cloud Fusion technology. This is the first beta release, and we will be making it even more powerful in the coming months and years. Currently, it works on the LAN, the local area network. Although any user can connect via the internet from a remote location as well. The basic idea is to allow many users to work simultaneously on the same model. So let's start by taking you through the installation steps, because those are very important from the administration point of view. And then towards the end, we will talk about how we actually use this fascinating technology.
Now let's talk about the COMOSYS multi-user installation, the server installation. So besides your normal COMOSYS setup file, which you will have when you're setting up the system, you will also have this COMOSYS multi-user server installer executable. And what you do is when you have this on your desktop or wherever you want to keep it, you can double click it to start the installation. So let me do that. When we do that, this dialog box opens up in front of us. And here you see the database administrator user settings. So we need an administrator, and this will be the person who will be creating other users in the database and will be assigning or can assign the roles of these users. So the name can remain the same, admin, and you can give the admin a password. So let's give it a password. And now after giving the password, you can press the next button. Now, right now, I'm just installing this on my own machine, but normally you would be installing this on your on the machine, which will be the server, which everybody else will connect to when they are synchronizing their models. So this is the local path on that machine where the database will be stored. The database which will hold all the all the information about the models, about the multi-user models. So I can accept this path, and I can press the next button. Now it asks me for the COMOSYS multi-user server path, and I can show the path or browse to change it, and I can press next again. Now it's asking me where the setup should place the program's shortcuts. I can accept that, press next again. And now I can press the install button. Now it comes to the finish point, and I can press the finish button to finish the installation. Now that the installation is finished, we can go and find our recently added COMOSYS multi-user server and click on it. Over here, it shows us the server installation path and the location where the server has been located, the server database has been located, and we can now use the admin user which was created along with the installation, together with the password which we gave, to enter the program. Now this is the COMOSYS multi-user server manager, and you have three tabs: the users tab, the projects tab, and the roles tab over here. And we'll talk about these in some detail. At the moment, if you notice, in the users tab, there is only the admin user, which is available over here, and no other users have been created. And the admin now needs to create the other users which will be actually doing the modeling. So let's say you have 20 people working in your company. What the admin can do is create these 20 users now on the screen. But before we talk about the creation of users, I want to talk a little about the roles tab over here. If I go to the roles tab, you can see that the roles tab has been divided into two parts. On the left, you have server roles, and we'll be talking about the server roles. And on the right-hand side, we have project roles. So regarding the server roles, there is the admin level. These are basically levels. There's the admin level, which can do all these things. So it can manage other users. It can manage their roles. It can assign them to projects. It can create new projects as well. It can delete a project. And then there are 10 levels of access. So there's user access level 0, 1, 2, 3, all the way to 10. And 10 is the highest level. Anybody with an access level of 10 can basically access everything. So the admin is like that. Then there are 10 other level categories. User level 1 is basically, you can change these, you can modify them, but we've given them by default off the shelf, these 10 levels, user levels. And user level 1 can create a project and has a user level access of 1. Similarly, user level 2 can create a project but has a user level access of 2. And similarly, it goes 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, all the way to 10. These are the server roles. They have to do with the server side of the management. But then there are project-specific roles for a particular project. And in this regard, a person can be a modeler, or can be a project owner, or can be merely a viewer at this point. So a project owner is basically someone who actually creates the first instance of a project. So for example, if you're creating a multi-user projects on which, say, 10 people or 5 people will be working, somebody will create this COMOSYS model, and that person will be the project owner. And this project owner has the right by default, and you can modify these, but by default has the right to delete that project, to assign roles to other users towards that project, has a read access to the project and a write access to the project. And if you check the read access and the write access, the owner has a read access of 10, project read level of 10, and also a project write level of 10. So the owner can basically read or write anything on that project. That's the way the project owner has been defined. Now, when it comes to the modeler, we see that the modeler is someone who's participating in the modeling. So there, like I said, 5 people on the same model. The modeler is also working, but this modeler cannot delete the project. So the owner only, according to these rules right now, the owner can delete the project, but the modeler has not been given the right to delete the project or to assign roles to other modelers or other people on the project. But he can read the project, he can write on the project, and he has a read access level of 10 as well as a write access level of 10. So basically he can work on the project just like the owner can, but he cannot delete or add more users and assign roles to that project. And then there's the viewer, who once again obviously does not have the delete project options. He can read the project and has a project read level of 10, so he can view everything, but does not have any write level associated with him. So he cannot change the model. Somebody who's just viewing the model, but as far as viewing the model is concerned, he can view anything. Obviously, you can change these numbers as well. But the difference between the viewer and the modeler is that the viewer cannot write anything to the model. So these are the project roles, and these were the server roles. The server roles have to do with the management of the project itself and the user levels in general. So with this information, right now we're going to use the server roles. So with this information, let's go back to the users tab. And as you know, we already have one user called admin, but now we can add new users to this multi-user server manager. So let's add a user. When we add a user, this form comes up, and we can give it a username, call it user1. This has to be this will be the username used by the program, and the user can have a first name. Let's call it ABC. Let's give it a last name of D. You can give an email address and a server role, the roles which we just talked about, the server side, not the model side. The server side role, what we can say is that this person is a user level 10. So he can, according to whatever capabilities the user level 10 has been given. So we've created this user 1, and let's add this user. And after adding this user, we can say apply changes. And when we press the apply changes button, now this user is actually added to the database, the user's database. Similarly, now we can press the add button again, and the same form opens, and now we can create a user 2 with a first name of DEF, for example, a last name of Z. Once again, I'm going to skip the email and give this person another user level of 10 and add the user and press the apply changes button. Now, if you've noticed, I've created these two users as the admin because I logged on as the admin, and the admin created the users but didn't really select any password for them. And the users themselves actually get to set their own passwords. Here is what I'm showing you right now is the administrator setting up the system and creating as many users as will be needed in that company. But the users themselves will then create their own passwords, and I'll talk about that in a second. So now I will talk about this create server registration file. This is a file which now the admin can create for any user which he selects. So let's select user 1 and say create the server registration file. So this file has an extension of COMOSYS server, and it's been given a name of register. We can keep that. Let's just change the location to desktop so that you can find it easily, and press the save button. And when we do that, this server registration file has been created. So now that we have created this server registration file, we can now, what we can do is we can, it's created a file, and we can send this file to the users, and they can then use this file when they're setting up the multi-user in COMOSYS. So let's assume that we have sent the file that we have just created to the users by email, or it's basically a file. And now the user is opening their COMOSYS application. So let me just double click on the COMOSYS application. And now let's assume I'm user 1 or one of the users. And when it comes to this, when I open it, I can go to the multi-user option over here. And here under the settings tab, if I press the settings tabs, I now have the chance to create my own multi-user settings. So what I can do is, if you remember, a file was sent to me by the admin, which was created using the other application. So I can press, if I can set the server from the registration file. So it'll basically set up everything which connects my computer to the server. This is my machine. I'm on the network, and the server is on some other machine. But all the connection information from my machine to that, the server name, the server path, etc., will be taken from this registration file which the admin sent me. So let me just click on the set server from registration file and go to the desktop where I saved it, go down. And if you remember, this was the name of the file, register COMOSYS server. And if I say open, then it brings me the name of the server, which is the name of the machine. In this case, it's my own local host, but for a real company, it will be the name of the server. And it will give me the server path on that local machine, which the admin had set up. And now I use my username, which is given to me by the admin, that your username is user1. And I can give myself a password. So let me give myself a password again. Now, so the admin doesn't really get to see these passwords, but the user themselves get to create their own passwords. And when I do that, after doing that, I can press the login button, and it will create the connection to the server. Now, it says set new password again and repeat the new password again. So here, actually, it doesn't take this one directly from here. I need to re-enter it over here. So let me do that. Say apply. And now it is connected. So as you can see, the icon has been changed from login to from login to logout. Now that my multi-user settings are complete and I'm logged in, I can go to my new option over here and create a new project. Let's call that multi-user 1 project in my local directory. And I just say create that. I don't want to save the existing one. So yeah, so this is the new project which I've created. It's multi-user project. And I can, this is the first time this project is being created. And imagine that I am the owner. And let me just quickly enter a few columns over there. And now if I go in and now it's saved. Let me save that. Now if I go back to the multi-user option over here, this project is open right now. Multi-user project is open. But if I go back to the multi-user, now you see this option of share model, which wasn't it previously. We had just settings and get shared project. But now since we have an open model, it is giving me the option of sharing the model. Now, when I press this button, what it will do is this model at the moment is on my local machine. What it will do is it will create a copy of this model. It will share this model. It will synchronize this model with the server, and thereby create this model on the server as well. So let's press this button. When we do that, we can give it a tag and a description. And we can decide on a read access level and a write access level because I am the owner. So if I give it a read access level of 3 and a write access level of 7, the users we've created so far are at an access level of 10, so they will be able to see it. So let me just give it any tag. T, doesn't really matter. You can give a description. Basically every time you put it on the server, you can give it a description. So let's just do that. Since the first time you're doing it, the read access level is 3, the write access level is 7, and let's say share. Now, when you do that, COMOSYS starts sharing this model with the server, and it's done. And the moment this is done, if you notice, these 2 new buttons appear at the top, which previously did not exist, telling us that this is now a multi-user model. And this can be, we can retrieve from the server, load updates from the server, or we can save changes to the server. These two options will then synchronize this model with the server. So now we are in a situation where user one has created a model called multi-user one and has shared that model with the server as the owner of that project. So user one is the owner, and user one has put that project onto the server. Now, if I were to go back to my COMOSYS multi-user server, which we just talked about, and open that again, and once again, I have to log in, let's say as the admin, and I log in once again. When I do that, obviously the user one, user two are still there. But now I'm going to talk about the projects tab, which we hadn't talked about. And if I go into the projects tab, you can see that on the right-hand side, previously there was nothing inside, but now there is this multi-user one. So some of the users, which is user one, has created a model and has put this model on the server. So what I can do is I can select this one, and the moment I select it, I can see that currently the user one is associated with this project and is associated with this project as the project owner. So if you remember the project owner, if I go back to the roles, there were project roles which we had talked about, which we hadn't used. So the project roles are the modeler, the owner, and the viewer. And since the owner creates the project, he's been assigned the project owner. And now what the admin can do is by selecting this multi-user project, he can say, let's add another user to this. So let's add another user, say user 2. And he can decide on a role, and let's give him the role of just a modeler, and obviously not the project owner. And say user 2 modeler, and say add user. Now, when you do that, now this user 2 has also been added to this multi-user project, and now we can say apply changes. And now these two, user 1 and user 2, are both attached to this multi-user 1 project. At this point, the admin can inform user 2 that you have been added to the project, and you can go and access it from your local machine. Now, let's assume we are on user 2's machine. So this is another machine now, user 2, and user 2 decides to open his COMOSYS on his local machine. And the registration file, which we had talked about earlier, has obviously been sent to this user as well. So he goes to the multi-user one, goes to the settings. He has this, he can get the server settings from the registration file, but now he can, what he can do is, so this is basically my own machine, so I need to log out over here first. Assume that this is user 2 now. This user 2 also gets the same registration file, which was sent to him by the admin, the register COMOSYS server, and it gets the local path. But now what he can do is he can say user 2, and he can give himself a password, 12345, and say login. And this time, once again, it asks for the confirmation. And I can say apply. And now this user 2 is also logged in now. So now I'm logged in as user 2. Imagine this is a third machine. There's user 1's machine computer, there's user 2's computer, and there's the admin's computer on the server. So now that he's logged in, he can say so he can go and create his own project, and he can become the owner of some other projects. But right now he wants to get an already shared project, some project which is shared on the server. He wants to get that. So he says get shared project. When he does that, he now sees the multi-user project which is on the server. So he can click on that, and it says select a folder to create the checkout model. So I can select a folder. I can basically what I need to do over here is tell it the local path where the local version of this multi-user model will be stored. So let's put it on the desktop for just for the sake of this video, and say OK. And when I do that, what COMOSYS will do is it will bring in the model from the server, And if I were to double click on this view over here, you can see that the model from the server has been retrieved on my machine over here. I'm user 2 right now, and this is the way things stand as far as the model on the server is concerned. Now what I can do is I can add, this is user 2 if you remember, I can add a few beams over here. And okay, this is my contribution to the model now. And when I do that, I can save my model. When I do that, now if you notice over here, it says load updates from server and save changes to the server. I can use my own save. This is on my local machine, but I still haven't saved it to the server. So if I say save changes to the server, if I press this button over here now, it asks me for a tag because it needs to first check on the server. So let's give it any tag which we want. Let's call it D1 description. And if you notice, it's not asking me for the read write levels because I'm not the owner of this project. And let me just say save. Now, when I do that, it has put this model on the server now. So my contribution, the 4 beams, are now on the server as well. So they're the same on my local machine because I've saved them, and they're the same on the server as well. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to shut down this COMOSYS instance. Do you want to save the project? I've already saved it, so no need to do that again. And open the same application again, but this time as user 1. So let me open the application once more. And now you imagine that I'm on the user 1 machine. So over here, this is the user 1 machine, and this is where it was on my local directory. Let me open that. When I do that, I don't see the 4 beams because this is the way I had left it. But the other user 2, has gone in and entered 4 new beams. But this is the way I'm seeing it on my machine. Now, if I go over there, I cannot, it shows that right now I need to load the updates from the server. So this one is on and this one has been turned off. So what I do is immediately I press this load the updates from the server. Something has happened. It's not allowing me to put my stuff on the server. So let me just press this button. And when I do that, immediately whatever changes were on the server have now been added to my machine as well. And when I see them and if I'm okay with them, I can just press save, and now they've been saved to my local as well. So this is very convenient, in which I've just walked you through 2 users and the admin setup of the server database and everything. I've taken a while, probably 15-20 minutes on this. The reason I did so was because I wanted to actually walk you through it. It is not limited by 2 users. You can have 3 users, 4 users, 5 users, 10 users, however many you need. Normally, you will not need 10 users or more than that. Typically, in most large-scale projects, you're working with 3, 4, 5 users at the same time. But this is the way you will set up the system. The admin will create the database. The first of all, like it will start off, you will need to set up the multi-user server. The admin will create the database, create the users, send the registration file to the users. The users will then go to the multi-users tab and then create their own passwords and log themselves in. The owners can decide to create new projects and put them on the server. Then if they have the rights, they can themselves go to the server side database and add other users to the same project, or the admin can do it for them. But once the other users have been assigned, they can then open COMOSYS like I showed you, log in to the multi-user server and get the shared project from there, and make their own additions or subtractions. What it will do is, what our Fusion technology will do is that it will merge the 2 models in a very convenient way. Obviously, merging models is a very complicated subject, and there are always contradictions, and those contradictions need to be sorted out with some assumptions. And usually the assumption is that the person who creates or modifies lastly is the one whose changes are then implemented throughout everybody else's model. This is, of course, a very, very simplistic example, but what you can do is typically with large multi-storied buildings, you can divide the building into stories. You can assign story number 1 to user 1, story 2 to user 2, story 3 to user 3, and so on and so forth. And by using this, the whole idea is that you can reduce the man hours, because what can be done in a month, you can do in 10 days with 3 users working on the same model at the same time. This is a very nice technology to have. Very few softwares, like I said, actually have this technology, because usually when we're dealing with very, very large projects, that is when you need this kind of technology with collaboration and multi-users working, multiple users working on the same model at the same time. Of course, it is not limited to just entering beams and columns. You can make your connections, your macros, whatever changes you make in the model, even drawings, etc. All will be brought together by the beautiful collaboration technology, the fusion technology which we have, which basically merges 2 models with contradictions between them and brings them down into one model, which then all the users can see at the same time.
So here, for instance, what I did was I added the 4 connections in the user 1 model and uploaded my 4 connections, the haunch connections which you're seeing on the screen, to the server. And now I've opened the desktop, the user 2 model. The user 2 model is now open, and I just downloaded from the server, and I have just managed to download the 4 connections, as you can see on the screen. Now let me make some changes on the user 2 side. So for example, what I can do is I can go to my edit menu, and for example, I can break this frame, this one, say somewhere over here, and I can create a splice connection, for example, between this beam and this beam. And this is the modification which user 2 has now made. And I can save this model on the user 2 side, and then I can, like I said, I can save these changes to the server once again. So let me press this button, and I can once again, I need a tag, I need a description. I can basically enter any description. The purpose of this is to have some sort of a tag associated with that change so that we can review it later. Now that I'm happy with this model and I've uploaded it to the server, I'm going to shut down the user 2 COMOSYS and open the user 1 COMOSYS this time. And the user 1 COMOSYS just has the 4 haunches connected, if you remember. And I can go to my, so let's see. Yes, this is user 1. I'm doing this all on my local host, so it's a bit confusing maybe, but you'll have the same experience with multiple users. So this is user 1 now, and this is what the user 1 is seeing when he or she opens the model. And now you can see this one has lit up, this red button over there. It says you need to get something from the server because the server is different from your local model. So I just press this button, and immediately whatever was on the server now appears on my screen. So I know what the other person has done. He's created a splice macro, he's broken the beam into 2, created a splice macro, and this really makes things very, very convenient for me. To continue, now I'm on user 1 side, as you know, and here I have made some extra connections by using the existing plates which already existed from the haunch macro. And I made this connection, the stiffen end plate connection, and I'm on the user 1 side. And what I can do now is I can save my model. When I save it, I'm saving it on my local machine, and then I can put it on the server. So I've made this connection over here from this side, and I similarly made the other connection for this beam as well. After having made these 2 extra connections on the user 1 side, I can now decide to put them on the server. Once again, a tag is needed. Once again, a description is needed, and I can just say save. And now it has been saved. And what I can do is I can save my local model again if I want to. I can shut down my COMOSYS. I don't need to save it now because I've already saved it. I can now go back to the user 2 because I was in user 1, if you remember. And user 2 is the one which is the model which is residing on the desktop. Like I said, I'm working on the local host. So this model is now being opened by COMOSYS. And as you can see, those connections don't exist right now because they haven't been pulled from the server, but this button has lit up. And if I press this button, we can see that the connections, let me turn off the cuts so that you can see them. The connections which I made, which the other user had made, now appear on this model as well. So very, very nice feature to have, this multi-user feature. It really allows us to work with large groups, really allows us to work with large projects. I'm doing a very, very simple case, but the reality is you can extend these ideas beyond the level which I'm showing right now. Typically, you will be working, let's say 5 users will be working on 5 different stories. Like I said, and ideally, what you would be able to achieve is something you do in 50 days, you'll be able to do in 10 days. So very, very useful feature to have, and we really hope that our users will enjoy using this, especially those working with large projects.
One thing I would like to mention at the end is that this server will be lying on the local area network of the company. So all the users inside the company will be able to see that server machine on the network. So this is the name of the server machine, and they'll be able to see it directly. And this is the path of the multi-user data on that server. But if somebody who is not from the company, is from another company, wants to join, then for example, they can connect through a VPN server. As long as they're seeing the same server name and they're connected to the same server name, they don't necessarily have to be physically present in that building. They can even be in another country, and they can work together with the other users on COMOSYS. So this gives you the opportunity that while the server has been set up on your local area network, but basically as many users as you want from as many other companies as you want, and they can be in the same country or in a different country. They can all be working on the same project at the same time.
In the end, I want to emphasize that COMOSYS was already a formidable software for the structural design community. Even without the features introduced today, it was extremely powerful and had a proven track record of saving thousands upon thousands of man-hours for its users. But today it got even more powerful. Version 2023 will take your business and give it some wings. It will allow you to leave your competitors behind. Once your people are trained, there is no looking back. I can promise you that. All I need from you is commitment. All I need from you is the vision to take this necessary step of choosing COMOSYS. It will not disappoint you.
Okay, that was a long webinar. Sorry for that. But I just hope that you liked what you saw, and obviously there were some features which we couldn't show. It was getting too long. Lots of little changes, things here and there, which you will note when you actually use the software. Just to give a summary, we added lots of pre-engineered building related macros, offshore macros, lots of drawing side improvements, lots of analysis and design side improvements, a lot you just saw in the last. But most importantly, the API and the multi-user. For the API, as you know, that's very exciting. You can create your own plugins, you can create your own custom components. We are providing sample code as well, so any programmers out there, they can just use our sample code and quickly create their own stuff very, very quickly. The multi-user capability, as I said, is very, very exciting, especially for companies which are dealing with large projects, and they will be very happy with it, we hope. And this will be a feature which will really distinguish COMOSYS from the other softwares out there. we've added a lot for 6 months of work, and you must have noted that. And when you actually download the new trial versions, which will be available on the 25th of this month. So today is the 12th, and we are planning to actually release this version on the 25th of January. You will then see all these features which you saw in the video today. Now, there were lots of questions, not lots, but there were some questions, and I noted them down, and I'll try to quickly go through some of them. So there was a question about RC design, and no, we do not have RC design at the moment in COMOSYS. So that's one thing. There was a question about bar bending schedules, and yes, it is possible to create bar bending schedules in COMOSYS, and very beautiful looking bar bending schedules at that, with the shape codes and the shapes, etc. There was another question about utilization ratios. That's obviously yes. The answer is yes. We do show utilization ratios with the structure in the new version, and not just in the new version, but it was available in the older versions as well. Whenever you see the design data, you can see the axial bending 2-2, bending 3-3 components of the utilization ratio and their totals as well. There was another question about grasshopper links. I think it was answered directly on the chat as well, but yes, we already have a grasshopper link at the moment. You can use that. It's very easy to use, very convenient to use. And what I can tell you at the moment is that we'll be improving that grasshopper link in the coming months and the coming versions as well. So it'll become more advanced and more feature rich in the coming versions as well. But right now, you can use the grasshopper link as it is. There was a question about creating loads directly from the imported equipment, and it was related to the IFC file. Now, the IFC files need to be implemented in that way. Right now, we don't have direct importing of loads from the IFC files, but in the future that could be possible. The one final question was that do macros work with inclined beams? And the answer is generally yes. Most of the macros in COMOSYS are very capable. They can be used in all sorts of different cases when the main and the secondary are rotated, inclined, skewed. Most orientations are usually supported. Now we've added even more support, and if you go and check the actual macros, you will see that most of them will be working with these kinds of requirements as well. That's basically a summary of what I have in front of me. Like I said, thank you for being here. Thank you once again for being with us during the webinar. It was long. Like I said, you were all very patient. We had good contribution from everyone. We will, like I said, just to summarize, we will be releasing this version on the 25th of January. So it will be available for you to buy or to update, depending on whether you're an existing user or not. And that's about it. So hope you like it. That's all I can say. And we'll be meeting again soon. Thank you. That'll be the end of the broadcast.